So yes, maybe it's not me. I don't actually know what you're thinking of, so I can't.
Well, it wouldn't be appropriate if I didn't sound stupid at some point. Um, with you just introducing yourself.
Sure. My name is Tara Platt. I'm an actress and a writer and a producer, an all-around sort of entrepreneurial business person. But at the heart of it all, I'm a storyteller.
Good, good. I'm a storyteller too. I
I
just
think we all are, but we don't admit it.
yeah, pretty much. One of the things you do that I find really fascinating is the voiceover stuff that you do.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into that? I know you were sort of trained first as an actor.
Yeah.
How did you sort of stumble into that?
Sure. That kind of happened a little accidentally. As you said, I was trained doing stage, and then I had come to Los Angeles to work in film and television, sort of doing more on camera or what people would see. And my husband, Yuri Lowenthal, who's also very known for his work as well, he and I were in Los Angeles, and we'd never lived here before, and we were just trying to get our heads on straight and figure out what the heck to do with our lives and how to put food on the table and, warm clothes and things like that. So you don't need as many warm clothes in Los Angeles as you do in New York. But anyway, we were just trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And because we are both actors, I started to look at that and I was like, okay, well, what jobs have actors? Where are there actors besides these few that I've thought of, which is theater, television, and film? And as I started to try to break it down a little bit, I realized that there are lots of other places that you may need actors. And I started to go, hey, wait a minute. Cartoons, they're those things that are those animated cartoons on television. Those are TV, but they're not exactly TV because you're not making all the sets and stuff like that. And we just started sort of rambling about that. And I grew up without a television, actually, when I was a kid. So it wasn't the first thing I thought of. But I used to go see a lot of movies, and I particularly enjoy animated movies. And so in my head, I was thinking, oh, like Disney, we could go work for Disney, just do voiceover for Disney. And Yuri's like, okay, but there's all these other ones because he grew up watching Robotech and actually lots of Japanese animation, things like that. So he had a very different idea of what that is. And so pretty quickly we were like, well, great. Well, we have to explore this at least as an option because we're still acting. We're still doing what we're passionate about. But potentially there could be a way for us to also make ends meet with that happening. And so we started a class, and from that class, he almost immediately booked work. And then I fairly shortly thereafter also booked work, and we've been doing lots and lots of voiceover ever since, although we still do television, film, stage, any medium that we're allowed to express ourselves, i.e. tell stories, we do.
Well, that's really neat. I've only been here in California less than 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
We moved from Virginia.
Where in Virginia?
Actually, kind of near where I think you're from, Richmond. Although you were like Fairfax, right?
Well, I was born in Fairfax, but I grew up when we moved back because we moved around a lot as a kid. But when we went back to Virginia, we were in Glen Allen, which is just right outside.
Yeah. Yes.
So I mean, I went to what was it, Tuckahoe Middle School and Tucker.
You went to Tuckahoe?
For a little while.
Tuckahoe. I went to Tuckahoe. Hated it.
I can't say they wrote particularly nice things on the school sign. They probably haven't changed that much since then.
That was a terrible place.
Yep. I mean, wow. I know why it's named Tuckahoe, the whole Indian thing, but that never stopped kids on the weekend from defacing the school sign.
It was well, and chances are some of my friends were doing that as well.
Sure.
But well, that's neat. It's a small. There's gonna be a lot of people in California who are from Virginia.
It's true. It's true.
Tells you something about Virginia.
Everyone's escaping, or they just get tired of the muggy days in the summer and then the cold winters.
I tell people I meet out here about Virginia, and they think I'm lying when I tell them that they're still hashing out the Civil War back there. It's like, it's not a done deal there.
I mean, that may be true for more places than we realize.
Unfortunately, that's very true. So for somebody who's interested in getting into voiceover, is it still the same approach that you would take now that then take a class
Yes,
looking?
yes, and I mean, I still give that advice. And as you probably know, Yuri and I actually wrote a book on voiceover and working in voiceover, and but it is very similar advice to what we did because we knew that that's the path that we had followed, and so we knew that that was at least one way to assure that you were getting the training you needed, that you understood what you needed to do, and that you had some options available to you to be able to pursue it. That, of course, by no means is the only way. And, you know, I always say there for anything, there's a different path for anyone. So,
Right.
I've actually been finding a lot recently. I mean, because now Yuri and I have been doing this for 12 years, 11 and 12 years, probably we've been doing voiceover. We've been in Los Angeles for over 13, which is just crazy. But so what I've noticed is, unlike the path that we kind of followed and that I think a lot of people did follow during that time, now there's a lot of people that are actually using social media and YouTube channels and things like that to be able to create sort of either a name for themselves. They dub things that are already out there and available, but they like fan sub dub thing, and or they just get really clever with social media and they befriend the people in the business working in the industry.
Right.
And then they sweet talk favors and come into studios and meet people, and then that way they actually get on their feet in a different way. You know, I mean, I'm not saying there's any one right way or there's only, you know, a certain thing. I still think that there's a lot of merit with making sure that you know you like what it is, that you understand the craft of it, and that you can work to a particular level. But I do think in any business, there are going to be some people that are more inherently good at it, whereas other people are going to have to train for it. So, I mean, that's a personal thing. It all just depends on the person.
Well, you seem to be pretty good at coming up with the different dialects, voices, that sort of thing. I know this question is probably similar to asking a writer where they get their ideas, but how do you decide what sort of voice a character will have, what sort of inflections, that sort of thing?
That's a good question. It's really hard to kind of put into words, but it's almost like, I mean, the best way I can equate it is when you're a little kid and you decide you're going to play a game with another little kid, you just sort of know how to do it. You're like, hey, we're playing dress up and I'm a doctor and you're the astronaut, and like it just all kind of makes sense because you're playing. And because you're playing, there's not really a wrong answer, but it just sort of makes sense to do it the way that you're doing it, and then there's the fun in it. And so I think for me, part of it is just that playful quality of, oh, okay, cool. So tell me a little bit about the project. All right, let me start to put those pieces into my head, and what pictures come to mind? What emotions do I start to get, or feelings do I have? And then how do I sort of picture that sounding? And sometimes it's very similar to the thing. So you picture a tiny, cute little mushroom, and he's floating along, and he's really cute, and you start to get this sort of cute sound because that's the image that you're picturing for the picture. Other times, you get the same information, and you're like, okay, it's this tiny, cute little mushroom, and he's floating around, and he's this, and you get a very, very different sort of creative impulse that drives the course of your decision making in a very different direction, both equally valid. And if you were to take, almost like if you were to take performances that have happened and take the complete opposite choice, they would be equally interesting and just as much fun and versatile and all of that. Just sort of like I did with that little example of the voice. One way it felt really right in that way, but then when you go the other way, you're like, oh, that's really cool, and I see it in a different way now. It's all just playing, I think, really. Just giving yourself permission to play.
Okay. What I know you started with a lot of anime, and I'm not terribly into that myself. My wife is more than so. She's Japanese, but what have you done anything? I thought Wonder Woman was awesome. What anime did you do? I'm trying to ask this question, not sound like a complete idiot. Did you do? It was a movie that Disney produced, but it was anime. Yeah, I'm not helping. See, I knew I didn't have sounded like an idiot.
I've been very fortunate. I've worked a lot, so that doesn't actually really narrow it down.
Doesn't narrow it down.
Sorry. I mean, I have done a lot of anime. I've done, several original series, like original Saturday morning, what used to be Saturday morning cartoon sort of stuff. I've done a lot of video games.
Yeah.
I've done kids stuff. So like I've read books aloud, and like as a narrator for kids. I've done Disney things where I've played little character stuff for them. So yes, maybe it's not me. I don't actually know what you're thinking of, so I can't.
Well, it wouldn't be appropriate if I didn't sound stupid at some point. It's weird with voiceover folks. You don't necessarily know them,
Right.
but you know them.
Yeah.
Because I started going through your reels and I went, oh, yeah, oh.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff. Is there anything in particular that you're really proud of that you've worked on?
That's hard because I think anytime you're fortunate enough to get selected and cast and get to play on something, there's a sense of pride in the fact that, hey, they picked me. That's cool. Right. So there's that. But like you said, I mean, there are certain characters that become more iconic. So Wonder Woman, of course. I mean, it's really cool to be able to say I've gotten to play Wonder Woman.
Right.
And then there are projects that are more challenging that when you get to work on it, you feel a personal sense of pride because of the difficulty, or how many people they saw for it, or things like that just sort of lends you a sense of, it doesn't mean that your performance is more outstanding than any of your other performances, but you have a certain pride in it. And then also, I mean, being able to do something for a long term. In fact, like Tamari on Naruto, I've gotten to play her as a character for almost a decade. Yeah. Like, how often do any actors, any performers, any voice artists really get to do that? I mean, there are people that do that. I mean, look at the people on The Simpsons.
Right.
But it's exciting to be able to be a part of something that is so, I don't know what the right term is, but that is so much bigger than you are. Like it feels exciting to be a part of a juggernaut, kind of, I guess, is the best way to term it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I've gotten to work on that I'm really excited about, or like it's nice when you get to do something like a learning or an education thing for kids. You sort of feel like, oh, that's so great. I'm actually helping them learn to speak for the first time, or I'm reading this children's book aloud, so there's going to be all these kids that are going to be listening to me reading them a bedtime story, or I'm the voice in the toy. Like, they'll get to play with it, and I'm going to be the one that they're talking to or mimicking or playing with because that's my voice in that object. And so there's a certain element of that. And then there's other things where you're like, oh my God, I'm so cool. I worked on this hot title, like, whatever, we all are excited about stuff we do.
Oh yeah, definitely. Is there anything that you would like strike off your resume? Something that you did that when you went back, it's like, that's.
I don't think so, because I feel like everything you do, you're learning from. And so even the jobs that I was like, or they cast me, but I don't think I ever did what they really wanted me to do, and things like that, you feel somehow a sense of, I guess, or I feel a sense of obligation to the project, and I want it to succeed. But sometimes I'm like, maybe I really wasn't the right fit, or they kind of felt bad, and that's why they kept me on. But I've also been fired. I mean, I've gotten jobs and then gotten fired off of jobs. I haven't really liked the direction that they've chosen to go with a character vocally, or things like that. But I don't think I would strike anything from my resume. Although I will say, I don't have the best memory for all the things I've worked on, because over the course of however long this is, I've done a lot of different jobs. And unlike a fan who gets to experience the project in a very sort of all-inclusive way, because they're watching the show or the video game or whatever from beginning to end, and they're in it, and they're experiencing those characters as full beings. When I go in to record, I may only get to see my lines. I may do 5 takes per line or 3 takes per line and just get in and get out, and that's all the experience I've had is 2 hours or 4 hours or 3 days working on this project or this title, with it being very disjointed. I won't see the character except for a flat image that they show me when I first start recording, so they know kind of what the character looks like or whatever. But I don't have the same association or relationship that the fan may, because now they've gotten to see the whole thing and the story being told in a more rich environment. And so I've forgotten things that I've worked on, or characters I've played, or what their voices sound like. And sometimes I feel bad about that, because it's not that I'm trying to strike it from my resume or my memory, but the experience wasn't necessarily as memorable to me as it was to somebody else who has gotten to enjoy it or perceive it or observe it. And so there's been a couple instances where at conventions, somebody said something, I'm like, oh, I didn't work on that. They're like, no, that's you. And they play it for me, it's me. And I'm like, except that was me. And I'm very sorry for that. Sorry. Or sometimes you don't know the name of what you're working on because it's under NDA. And so everybody's so secretive nowadays that like the titles of the projects are like the Untitled War Death Game. And you're like, well, that could be any single game that ever comes out. And, unless you know your character's name so specifically,
Yeah, and I imagine when you're, even though it's like, cast of thousands, a lot of times you'll do your part by yourself. Is that how that works?
More often than not. I mean, with original animation, if it's like a cartoon, you oftentimes record together because that way you get the flow of somebody saying their line and then you responding. It's almost like a table read for theater. But with video games, almost all of them, I would say 99% of the time, it's all individual because they're trying to get through it. It's very technical. Even if it's original, it's a brand new video game, they still record everyone separately. With any kind of dubbing, Japanese animation or French animation or anything like that, you go in single one at a time because you're having to record that individually. And most stuff that you do that's cartoon, that's not cartoon, that's like book on tape or kids' toys or things like that, you do solo. Books on tape, you do solo. Most of the work is solo. And so you're not having that kind of interaction with anyone else unless it's original animation where you're actually getting to do a group record, which is why I think so many people love original animation so much because you get the opportunity to work with your fellow actors as opposed to just seeing their name on the sign-in sheet.
Does it bother you when you have to do it so isolated?
No, because I think, it's kind of like that thing I was saying earlier about when you're a kid and you play dress up and you're playing with your friend. Your friend in this case just happens to be you. So you're playing with you are your friend. And so you're making the choices for your friend as well as you. So you're basically playing two characters at once.
Yeah, my 7-year-old does that all the time. She'll have these long, drawn-out conversations with herself and arguments, and I'll walk by and look at her, and she'll go, "Shh, I'm playing."
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I think the fact that I was an only kid and I moved around a lot and I didn't have a lot of friends as a kid probably actually helps me in my career.
It sounds like that's the sort of, a lot of people aren't really good by themselves. Yeah. They don't like the silence in their own heads.
Yeah.
But it's good that's it's nice to know that I still have some dysfunctions that could be profitable in the future.
Exactly.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, actually the first time I ever saw your face was on Tabletop.
Oh, yeah, Tabletop's so much fun.
What did you think about that? Is that, I get the feeling that that's like a long game or a drawn-out process. Is it that way?
No, yes, we're playing the game and we play it from beginning to end, but I like playing games, and those people that I get to play with are my friends, and so it ends up just being a really fun experience. Okay. It's just like if you invited some friends over on a Friday night and you're like, hey, let's drink some wine and play a video game, or not play a video game, but play a tabletop game. It's sort of that kind of experience. So, to me, it flew by. It goes really fast when you're actually in the game process. And then they do an amazing job on that show of editing and figuring out what the right ways to show things. And then, even during the process of while you're shooting, they know when to take breaks so that way everyone can run to the bathroom. And then they also sort of individually go, hey, can you come talk to the camera and say what you're doing right now in the game? So what's happening? So that way they do a really good job of managing it. And so you pretty much, you show up, you make sure everything's ready, you make sure that you know who you're playing with and what's going on, and then you just do it, and it's really lots of fun.
It's an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, it is.
I'd rather know the answers, but
sure. Wouldn't we all like that magic, lottery ticket that comes from the future that we know we're guaranteed?
Well, I have one scripted question, and then you can tell me anything that you're interested in promoting. I saw that you're a certified master hypnotist.
I am.
How did that come about?
I am a student of the world and a student of life, and I think that you should always be learning. I think learning is what makes you more you. And so I decided to put myself through school and get a degree in hypnotherapy. And so I did. I went back to school. I got a degree in hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming and therapeutic imagery, all that sort of good stuff. And yeah, I did it because I was fascinated. I'm fascinated by the way the mind works. I'm fascinated by the way that sometimes we're able to easily make changes in our lives, while other times we seem extremely hindered and we get stuck in patterns and rote behavior that's actually not helping us. Even though we're aware that it's not helping us, we still do it. And so I was fascinated by why that happens and how to make the shift and how to make the change. And I realized that traditional therapy doesn't always do that. People can go for years and years and years to therapy and go talking about the terrible thing that happened to them when they were whenever, and they still sort of stay on it and they harp on it, and it doesn't actually change behavior. Sometimes it does, but just, like, it doesn't always. Whereas I started to notice that the difference about hypnosis was people would go to a session or two and already behavior patterns would start to shift and change. And I was like, okay, there's something here. I think there's validity to being able to talk through your problems and get it out and communicate it and figure out why you feel what you feel and who you are now versus who you were then, and really be able to psychoanalyze something and sort of process that on a certain level. But I think there's a lot of validity with just saying, look, the car's broken, let's just change the tire. Let's not discuss when the tire was invented and why cars have tires and which direction the steering wheel should be in. Those are all important things, and if you want to understand how a car goes, that's very important and can be your life journey. But in the meantime, you can't get back on the highway till you fix that tire. Right. So that was one of the reasons. And I was very, very happy, and I went to school and I got my degree. And I actually stopped climbing for a while because actually, as a part of getting my degree, you have to have practice. So you have to log client. Yeah, you have to log hours and actually be working. And so I did that for a little over a year after, through school.